Why might you be villainous? Well, first of all, because you can be. That's a big deal. You can be. It's actually an offshoot of empathy. This is something that took me decades to figure out. I figured it out when I was studying the book of Genesis, because in the book of Genesis people become self-conscious and they immediately have the knowledge of good and evil. I just couldn't figure that out. It's like, what the hell's the relationship between that? And then really, I tell you, I thought about that like for 30 years, trying to puzzle that out, and then I realized what it was. If you're self-conscious, you can conceptualize yourself as a being. You know that you are, and you know what you're like, and you know what hurts you and what doesn't. And as soon as you know what hurts you, you know what hurts her. And so that's the knowledge of good and evil that comes along with being self-conscious. This is something that distinguishes human beings from every other animal. You know, a lion will eat you, but it doesn't really want to tear you apart slowly just for the fun of it. Well, it eats you, it just wants to eat you. And you know, you could call that evil. It sucks, that's for sure. But animals are beyond good and evil in that sense. But human beings, man, we can aim our malevolence, and we're really good at it, because we can imagine, God, this would hurt, and if it hurts me, man, it's really going to hurt you. You might think, well, people couldn't be consciously pursuing that, but yes, they can. So, and you need to know that you're like that, because you are like that. And if you don't know you're like that, or if you don't think you're like that, you're even more like that than you think. Because the people who are most like that are people who don't think they're like that at all. I think it was Alexander Pope, but I might be wrong about that, who said, nothing human is foreign to me. And that's a hell of a statement, right? Because if you think about all the things that human beings are capable of, to say that nothing human is foreign to you, that's a hell of a thing to say, because that means that what other people have done, you could do. And that's why in many systems of thinking, the world is conceptualized as a battle between good and evil. The culture is the wise king and the tyrant, and that's always the case. You're always stuck with that, because as an individual, with your negative side and your positive side, your negative side is the resentful side that is irritated at the limited conditions of being and the suffering that entails, and its arbitrary and unfair nature. And no wonder, like, that side has a case to make. It's not trivial. In the Brothers Karamazov, that argument is laid out beautifully. There's a character, Alyosha, who's a monastery novitiate, and not really a sparkling intellect, but a very good person. And he has a brother, Ivan, and Ivan's a vicious genius. And Ivan just takes Alyosha apart, and partly he does that by telling a story about this mother and father had taken their young daughter and locked her in the outhouse overnight when it was like 30 below, and you know, she stayed out there crying and screaming and froze to death. And Ivan basically said to Alyosha, you know, a world in which that could happen should not be. It's a good argument. You know, and you can multiply that by millions of examples. So the part of us that is opposed to being and resentful, it's got a point, man. The problem, as far as I can tell, is that if you act that out, then it makes what you're objecting to worse. No one argues with their own pain. How about a little reduction in the old suffering? You know, so you live your life so that you're not causing undue pain, especially pointless pain. That would be good, and maybe you could even be more useful than that, and you could figure out some ways that some suffering, yours, other people's, both, if you're really, you know, hitting a home run, maybe you can figure out some way that some of that could be rectified. And that seems to be meaningful in and of itself. I mean, if it's pain that makes you doubt the meaning of life, which is perfectly reasonable, then the cessation of pain, the cessation of suffering, the minimization of suffering, as a logical corollary, should be the proper medication. And so I would say that means that there's some mode that you can conduct yourself in that makes you a good person.